Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Ride the Streams discussion of the television series Lost. I'm Michelle, one half of the hosting duo here, and with me is, of course, Travis. Every week we're here to talk about Lost, and I'm the newbie. Travis is the veteran. And we are actually, I am truly now newbie because this was my first episode that I hadn't watched before when I first reached out to you, Travis, to say, hey, did you ever watch the series Lost? And got us going on this road. This episode is called Born to Run, and it was originally broadcast on May 11th of 2005. And I think when we actually post this, it'll be about 20 years. It's kind of interesting and kind of fortuitous that we are having this discussion about this series that ran from, I think, 2004 to 2010. We won't
Yep.
take nearly that long to have our discussion, but it will be kind of lengthy. So buckle your seatbelts because you're in for a very long transatlantic discussion, but one that we hope that you will enjoy, be interested in, will take part in either through watching the series again and, of course, commenting downstairs. So, Travis, how are you today?
It's Monday, so you
Yeah,
know,
we're recording Monday.
it's one of those days where we had a few days of temperatures in the 50s and up to 60s, and now it's back in the 20s. But in Maryland, that's kind of the whirlwind of weather that we expect, kind of chaotic. Um, I am just excited that we are now in the zone of I really have to watch what I say uh, to not spoil anything moving forward. Um, I'm excited to get your take on this episode and all future episodes. And this was, we talked about it offline. This was a less intense episode, and the story and the characters kind of drove this everything along. And I think that kind of, this show can really shine with the cast that they have. So it was really nice to not feel like I was, you know, so tense the entire episode from the action or,
Mhm.
the injuries that have happened in the previous episode. So yeah, this was a really good episode.
Like they all are for
Yes.
different reasons. For anybody that's new, just so you know, we do a plot synopsis, so there will be spoilers. So if you haven't watched this episode yet, the Lost episode 22 of the first season, do take a pause, go watch, and then come back and rejoin us. So that way you don't get unnecessary spoilers. So I think if you're ready, Travis, I'll go ahead and jump into the plot synopsis. Good with that?
Let's rock and roll.
All right. Okay. So with the raft construction well underway, and us, the audience, on our last episode before the three-part finale of season one, a cautionary voice rises from amongst the group of survivors. High school science teacher Arts has been studying the shifting pattern of winds. Now, astute viewers have probably noticed the larger waves crashing on the beach in recent episodes. While Arndt states that this signals the approach of monsoon season. The monsoon season also means that the raft's course will be impacted. So instead of heading north as to expected shipping lanes, the raft group would be pushed south. And we all know that Antarctica would be the eventual destination. Sawyer, of course, doesn't believe Arntz and belittles him, as is customary. But Michael is inclined to agree and wants to push to leave very, very soon. While the anticipation of rescue infects a few of the survivors in a positive way, such as Charlie picking up his guitar to start composing the next Drive Shaft album. I'm ready. You?
Totally.
And others, such as Sun and Kate, are much more introspective about what they stand to lose. For example, Sun learns that Jun will be taking one of the 4 spots on the raft. Sun grieves as the man she loves is slipping away from her. She articulates that she used to think that once she found the love of her life, she would be happy forever, a sentiment that Kate agrees with. Kate's flashbacks are showcased in this episode. During the flashbacks, she meets up with her childhood friend and perhaps her true love, Tom. We discover Kate has always been a free spirit with wanderlust in her blood. We come to learn that the toy airplane that Kate carries around was actually Tom's and had great significance for him. Now a doctor, Tom helps Kate with a favor. Kate needs to see her dying mother one last time, who's in the hospital and guarded by a cop. So, what we expect to be a happy, loving reunion between mother and daughter turns out to be a terrifying and heart-wrenching moment for Kate as her mom calls out for help because she is terrified of Kate. Boy, is there more to Kate's story to uncover. In any case, Kate must run and wants to do so in Tom's car. However, Tom comes with her, and after crashing through a one-cop car barricade in which bullets fly, Tom is shot and dies. Kate is emotionally crushed twice over. Back at the island, Kate is desperate to get off and continue running from the law. She jockeys for Sawyer's spot, while Sawyer fights to keep it. Michael is poisoned and experienced some severe stomach cramps. While Jack becomes Dr. Sleuth, Sawyer exposes Kate's secret fugitive status to the core group of survivors. Sawyer is back in 4th spot, and Kate is to remain on the island, with her secret exposed for all the survivors, or most of the survivors. So for the scorecard, for those keeping tabs, Walt admit he didn't hurt his dad, but he did come clean to Michael that he burned the first raft, leading Michael to offer to stay on the island with Walt and give up their spaces on the raft. Jack deduces that it was Sun who tried to poison John's water, so he would be too sick to leave the island. She did it out of fear for his safety as well as for love. Jack states that he will not tell anyone. So, Kate didn't do it, but she did have the idea, a part of the tale that Sun did not reveal to Jack. Oh gosh, I almost forgot. Jack now knows about the hatch. Jack wants to know how to open it. Saeed was not expecting that response. He thought Jack would side with him and want to cover the damn thing back up. Jack and Locke call a cautionary truce after determining that they have both withheld information, as is their discretionary right as survivors of the island. And to just Locke, Walt issues an eerie warning: don't open it. There we go.
Oh,
I think I
yeah.
hit most of everything.
Yeah.
Probably a few things for us to bring up in our discussion. So, Travis, as the resident veteran, how did you feel about watching this episode again?
Um, I mentioned briefly before we started recording how I don't think I realized how set in his ways and like sanctimonious Jack is. Um, he clearly does not like John and is upset with him about lying or keeping secrets, but he's also okay with keeping sons. Yeah, I don't think I realized like how intense he was with this like they're like yin and yang somehow, even though they're like the same person in a way, with Jack and John. Um, but he clearly doesn't like him. I do like that Locke put him in his place when he said, I didn't think I had to report to you. And like, how long did you keep the gun case before deciding it was okay for the rest of us to know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think, I want to roll this back to you, because this is the first, because you'd watched the first 21 episodes before we started, deciding, okay, let's go ahead and record ourselves having our chats. And
Yep.
um, so this has been the episode that we've been waiting for. I've been waiting for to like kind of get your fresh take on um, how it was to watch and then almost instantly react on it while we record. Um, did it feel like I know this was Kate's episode, but I feel
Mm-hmm.
like we got a lot from several characters. Because I feel like usually in flashbacks, it's primarily, okay, we've got the flashbacks and maybe the main story is also revolving around that character. But this episode seemed to kind of involve so many of the characters, and maybe that's because there's so much work happening on the island with the raft and the hatch being kind of, you know, filtering out to certain people. How did you take in this episode?
So when I watched it, I definitely made sure that I took down some initial thoughts. And like you, I felt like we weren't on this huge roller coaster of different activities, although the writers did manage to make sure that we see most everybody, like we get briefly, Hurley, we get a shot of Shannon as she kind of looks on as things are unfolding on the beach. We get a little bit of Claire and Charlie with the baby, that helps kind of push that storylines along a little bit. So I was really impressed that we got, like you said, quite a bit of the different characters in this episode, where oftentimes we'll just kind of focus in on a few, and that'll be kind of our main advancement of those storylines. What I felt overwhelmingly, that even though the title was Born to Run, I think it is almost like A Time to Grieve. Might have been a good title for this, because I was really left with feelings of grief that were arising from losing a loved one, either through death or through distance. And I really felt that that was a theme that was explored in this episode. Kate loses her childhood friend Tom, as well as her mother, to cancer. Although I was getting the sense that she had lost her mother many years before, based on the few things that we know so far with Kate's background. Um, we also get from Sun her mourning the loss of her husband, through events that have been unfolding over the weeks, particularly her being able to speak English, probably the subtle feelings of she was ready to leave him, because he might be wondering, why was she learning English? other than to maybe, slip away. Um, but one of the other characters that we also find kind of grieving a sense of loss, and that was Sawyer. He grieves from a lack of friendship and connection with anyone on the island. However, I felt like that might be debatable because I do feel that one's perception is very powerful and can trump reality. Um, we've talked, you know, outside of this recording about different things that we experience, whether it's reality or someone else's perception of that
Yeah.
reality. So I thought that was kind of an interesting uh, revelation from Sawyer because I felt that we've seen him connect with Kate, and maybe a little bit with Locke. And, he has been kind of making some connections, but it seems his reputation as scavenger is a deep one on the island, and is going to take more time for him to get past that. Um, so this all led me to feeling that uh, giving me thoughts to think about, um, the loss of innocence that we have with Kate and Tom, the loss of dreams, the loss of opportunities through shifting relationships. Like Kate and Tom, they find their little time capsule, and it's 20 years later, and they're or maybe sort of 20 years later, don't know for sure. But, Tom thought they'd be married, they'd have 9 kids. And yet, young Kate, has already said, I can't wait till I get my license because I'm gonna run away. Maybe Tom will come, type of thing. And something happened that didn't transpire. It did for her, but not for him.
Yeah.
So I thought that was actually, we needed an episode where it was more an emotional and mental journey this time, and a revelation of various secrets and how those are handled. Like, it was really poor form of Sawyer and was pretty a low blow for him to throw out Kate's secret of being a
Yeah.
fugitive, especially given all that she's done for others on the island. And
And
I,
him.
yeah, and for him. And I just am like, that was really dirty to go that far. Kate, yeah, she put down Sawyer, but rightly in a way, to Michael, like, well, how much experience does he really have sailing? And you want to have strong people on this raft that is your, rescue opportunity. These should be your stellar people, you know. Should Michael and Walt even be on the thing? That's debatable too,
Yeah.
but you definitely have someone who doesn't know what they're doing on that raft, and that is Sawyer. So, yeah, um, it's a sad episode. And I was left really feeling sad and disappointed by some of the actions of the people and how all these relationships, all these friendships are really built on sand, and they are constantly shifting. And that's a lot of what I was left with as far as themes. The other part were the surprises. So for me, that included the tiny toy. I really thought that was probably Kate's child or, some child's. And it was Tom's. But, the tie to it was different than what I had
Yeah.
anticipated. And also I would say the fact that we find out that it was Sun, not Kate. It wasn't Locke. It wasn't Sawyer. It wasn't John, that spiked Michael's water. Wasn't Walt. I think maybe I said that. I don't know. But, that it was actually Sun, who you didn't expect, but has the capability. So it's interesting how all these things come to the surface that you didn't expect. And I mean, I don't know. I should have maybe expected her, especially since how she feels about John, and not wanting to leave. And I was actually very sympathetic with that because, along with grieving about past things going on, current things, but also the survivors that are going to be on the raft. I am really worried. But now, with
Yeah.
the nice little bombshell that Walt gives to Locke about not opening the hatch, and now Walt definitely wants to leave the island. He
Yeah,
knows
that's a big
something.
shocker.
Yes. And so, I mean, I have been feeling anxiety about the um, survivors that are going to leave on the raft, but now it has just been notched up a few times beyond what. So I have a lot of anxiety. So I'm feeling emotionally wrought by the various relationships and friendships and everything impacted by that. But now the anxiety level, the stress level has gone up. So that's kind of my initial impressions of this episode. So,
Yeah, and Sun, when she's talking to Jack at the end, I think her exact words were she didn't want him to die out there. And
hmm
that almost like amplifies that feeling like, oh crap, are the people who leave not gonna? Because you always think, oh, in the back of your mind that ho hum maybe, but with arts kind of given the wind patterns and Sun making that statement that she didn't want him to die out there, it did that does raise like the anxiety of like, oh crap, what can happen to them?
especially since we just came off Boone dying, who was one of the more primary or secondary primary type characters. Um, you know, and not anticipating the George R. Martin approach to kill off your
Yeah.
darlings. And yet we're going to have Michael Walt, Jun, and Sawyer on that raft. Are they going away? Are we going to lose them at the end of the season? I mean, and I've come to like all of them, even Sawyer's rough exterior, but there's a lot to like about him as well and what
Yeah.
he brings to the dynamic of the island. So, yeah, I'm really concerned. I'm concerned for their safety, and you know, I do wonder about the show and who's going to survive after the finale. Because,
And um I I was thinking while you were talking, trying to think, okay, is there a positive storyline to take out of this episode? And I was thinking about um when Sawyer was upset with Michael because Michael is accusing him of being the one who poisoned him. And Sawyer gets close to him and Jen pushes him away. And I was like, talk about a
hmm
full circle relationship.
yes.
Like where Jen was beating up Michael on the beach after I don't know what episode it was because he thought he had stolen watches. Um, and there was always this, son going to Michael for, when no one else knew she could speak English but Jen would see the two of them together and there was this definite animosity between them. Um, and then as soon as Jen decided to help with the boat, and each episode they've kind of like what Hurley called them, like a old married couple
Yeah.
trying to build a raft. And they're starting to understand some words from each other, and to see Jen stand up for Michael is, I think, a big, big
Mm-hmm.
deal. Because you definitely wouldn't have said that earlier in the season. So I do appreciate that. Um, and another couple lighthearted scenes that I really appreciated with, Claire trying to give Charlie a haircut. And she's like, "Would you stand still so I don't cut your ear off?" And
Yep.
I think he has talked about the second song of the album being called like the Monster Ate the Pilot or something. I was like, wow, that's that.
Well,
If only people knew.
yeah, and it was cute how, you know, something so innocent as, well, he's talking to Kate that platinum. And she's like, well, what about platinum? Oh, well, I'm sure my record's gonna platinum because the news has gotten out that I'm missing. And, his importance and, because of that, and now he's sure they're gonna get rescued with the people going out on the raft and he wants to be ready, darn it, with that next album because he wants to ride the wave of that notoriety or, being famous for 15 minutes as one of the survivors. So that was really cute. But at the same time, again, I'm thinking how wonderfully that dovetailed in to Kate's rise of anxiety about now she's got to run again. How can she run when she's on
Yeah.
an island? While she could take a different ID, and with only the three other survivors, she could probably pull off being Joanne or Joanna, the gal that had drowned some episodes ago.
Yeah.
Where she could basically get away and evade the law. I am so curious, and that's in my initial observations, is the fact that this, I think, is the second time we've had Kate. And, you know, in the first one, it's the bank heist. Now we've got that she's visited childhood friend. We know about her mother. We know her name, I think, is Kate Austin. Or, yeah, is that right? I think it was Kate Austin. I'm not. I mean, her
Austin,
name,
Weston, something.
yeah,
Yeah, I
and
can't.
that her full name's Catherine. So we know that it's Kate. So, we know that much.
Tom calls her
Um,
Katie.
yeah, Katie. So I am very curious because I immediately, with this round of flashbacks, I'm really trying to like put together her timeline. I found out I was really trying to work that out. When did the bank heist come up? Well, let's see. The plane was in the lockbox. So I know the bank heist came after Tom died.
Yep.
Okay, so that's after her mom died, I guess, probably. But how did she end up in Australia and things like that? So, um, since she's staying on the island, I'm assuming that we'll get more flashback episodes with her. So I'm anxious to see more of her timeline. Um, I think she's a good person, and
Yeah.
I think that whatever happened, um, well, she did not kill Tom. She tried to evade the police, but it was actually a cop that killed, Tom when he
Yeah.
was trying to get them to stop. And she went through with the car. So, she didn't kill Tom directly, but you know, indirectly through her actions. So,
Yeah.
which was sad.
Yeah.
I liked the Tom character, and I felt like they had nice chemistry. They're listening to the tape of their time capsule, which was really sweet. Gives us a lot of information about how they felt, or at least he felt about her. And the kiss that they had. Um, that seemed like a really genuine kiss,
Yeah.
between the two characters. And I think that highlights, how great the acting is, all the way around. Even Sawyer, when he says that he wants off the island because he has nothing to stay for, you feel it. You really,
Yeah.
really feel it. And even when the camera's not on you, you still see those characters are very much present. And I noticed that with when Jack and Locke were kind of bantering back, and Sawyer's like this, kind of like watching. He's there, and even Shannon when she does her walk by, her just real brief, but she's
Tell
taking
she's
it
still
all in.
struggling. Yeah.
Yeah, she's still struggling. She's still upset. She lost, uh, she's lost a lot, So her loss, booned by death and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. The whole thing with the flashbacks with Kate, is this the episode where we realize that, because I think we talked about she'd said something about she's from Canada, but we didn't really know. And this takes place in Iowa because Tom says, no, I'm no self-respecting Iowan goes anywhere without a beer.
Yeah.
And they have the video, the cassette tape of them together. So it makes me think Kate's from Iowa. That's how I took it.
Yeah, or Midwest, either there or Ohio, but somewhere, that she's actually, from the US, that she's not Canadian. But
Yeah,
who knows? Maybe she was born in Canada and they moved to the US. We just don't have
that's
uh,
true.
enough information with regards to her background. But, the fact that when she arrives there at the hotel, she's already got her whole deal. Like, she had blonde hair, like if she had been Claire, that light blonde hair that she dyes or, dyes back to brunette, I guess. Um, and that, she's got like 20 different car license plates,
Yeah,
switching them out on the car. So she's a survivor. Um, and knows what she needs to do. And like, she even gets into a hotel room, and then has mail waiting for it and I think maybe another hotel, under another name. She's getting cash from somewhere, which I also thought was interesting. Somebody's kind of helping her. We
yeah,
just don't know who.
yeah. Yeah, that'd be interesting to see because I can't imagine in my brain it wasn't. I'm thinking it's not Tom because he dies in this episode. So it
Hmm.
would make sense if they had someone else that she could turn to in the future
Yeah.
to help. Um, and it's, Tom is, married. He's got, I think he's a 22-month-old baby, a
Hmm.
toddler. Um, and, he tells her it's not fair that she came back. Um,
Yeah.
but clearly there's still, feelings there. Um, so yeah, it's interesting to see what, like you pointed out, Kate's timeline and just wondering how long has she been on the run?
Hmm.
For her to dig up that and then go to a place where she could deposit that plane into a bank safe deposit box. Like I
Hmm.
feel like we're talking, I'm assuming years that she's been on the run.
Yeah.
Um, and just going back to the conflict with Sawyer, I did find it interesting that Sawyer was accusing Kate of not caring about anyone and she would do anything to get off this island. And he's kind of doing the same thing,
Hmm.
so maybe he thinks that Kate would do exactly what he would do or what he is doing. Um, I do appreciate that, at the end when she asks if he's coming to apologize, he's like, that's not my thing. I'm,
Yeah.
I don't say sorry.
Oh,
And he just tells her you cornered me. And she's like, how did I corner you? He's like, you told me you're going to take your spot. I guess I believed you. And I
yeah.
think that kind of, I feel like validates, not that as Kate needs a validation, but and the way that Kate looked when he said that was she is recognizing Sawyer's belief in her capabilities. Um, so even though he didn't apologize, I could see that moment being a moment where the fence is kind of mended. Even though he did her dirty with exposing and it just felt like, you know, Sawyer was like, hey, I wasn't trying to call your bluff. I was trying to prevent you from stealing my spot because I
Mm-hmm.
believed you could do it.
Yeah.
Um, so, um, yeah, there's a lot of hostility under the surface in this episode. There's a lot of like, I think your take on it with the loss of loved ones or relationships, I think that's could be the central point of the whole episode. Because everyone in a way, I mean, even there's Kate and Sawyer. Also, know, Jack telling Kate, you know, I don't know if you didn't poison Michael. Like, I don't know what you're capable of. Like that's a wedge
That was
between them.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Kate, you kind of drugged Jack in the previous episode, so maybe he had reason to believe that
It might
you
not
are
be too
capable of
far
that.
from from the truth. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a lot going, the even when Jack and Locke seem to find common ground, Jack clearly is keeping the wedge between the two of them. I think Locke would be perfectly content with saying, "Hey, we can work together. I think we have a common goal, even if we have different approaches, we have different secrets."
Yeah.
But Jack doesn't want any part of that. He tells Michael that they haven't made up. And so I think you're right. I think there are a lot of broken relationships. And the one that does give me the most worry is, I think, Sun's fear of losing Jin and not dying out on the ocean. I it feels real. Um, she expresses her own grief for, she didn't want to hurt Michael. She
Yeah.
said and it, I guess I even wonder if Michael would understand if he found out. Like if he found out that it was meant for Jen, I could see even Michael understanding. I mean, like that conversation with Walt at the end was fantastic as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Like Walt feeling open enough to tell him that he burned the first draft down.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael is taking it in. Walt is apologizing. And Michael just tells him it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Walt said that he wanted to stay. And the fact that Michael's willing to bypass all of the work that he's put in on building two rafts
Yeah.
to tell his son, hey, if you want to stay, we can stay. I thought that was huge.
Yeah.
I and it really speaks to how close they've gotten
Mm-hmm.
to where the first couple episodes where Michael's really just trying to find his footing as a dad, like, and you losing his temper, and
Mm-hmm.
he's just trying to make Walt safe. And how do you make Walt safe on an island with tons of mystery and dangerous things. So,
Polar
um,
bears and
yeah,
other creepy things in the jungle.
it's just, yeah. And that scene with Hurley, with John and Jack about like, how am I supposed to keep straight? Who knows why? Um,
Again, lighthearted moment. We didn't have a lot of those this episode. There was not a lot of those pauses. I think we're meant to really kind of dig into, the overarching themes and kind of live in their skins for 43 minutes.
yeah,
Um, I think we're kind of at a point where, since you did mention the scene with Michael and Walt, kind of, visiting our couple of questions that we have on each episode. The first one being, what is your favorite scene or standout moment from the episode? Would you say that's your scene? Does that scene kind of take top spot?
yeah. I mean, I think the dynamics between Michael and Walt, what we've seen from them, um, it just speaks volumes to, Michael never wanted to be away from Walt when he was a baby. That was the
Yeah.
mother's choice to take him, regardless of whether or not Michael wanted him to leave or not. Um, and now he's getting that chance to be a dad, and I just love that moment. I think, Walt is vulnerable. Um, he's willing to take that risk of not knowing how his dad is going to react to him burning the
Hmm.
raft. And I don't think anyone could have handled that better. That was such an amazing thing to see. Um, and on top of that, the fact that Michael is willing to stay and saying that they don't have to leave. And Walt on the flip side is like, yeah, we do. Like how
Hmm.
ominous of a statement that is.
Yeah.
All Walt wanted to do was stay. And for whatever reason, that feeling has turned completely upside down. And that's why it's another great that scene is great because it amplifies what Walt said to Locke earlier about, hey, don't
Mhm.
open that thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so there's like this double layer of, great parenting moment, of great bond, to then the oh crap, what's in that hatch that Walt is like has this understanding, like kind of like Locke. They have this feeling of the island. It's a special place, and
Yeah.
but for whatever reason, the hatch has changed that for Walt. Um, so yeah, that I really love that scene. I have a I think I have a couple other honorable mentions, but I'll go back to you first
Hmm.
to see what your favorite scene was. Um,
I would probably say that would be a favorite for me as well, because of all the ramifications around it and the growth between those characters, which I really like seeing. I think that if Walt had come clean and it had been at the beginning, like when he, torched the first raft, if he had come clean at that time, Michael would have been so irate. He would have been so mad at him,
yeah,
um, and would not listen to what he has to say. Um, or the fact that, the reason why he wanted to stay there is because he's done enough moving around and he just wants some stability. So there's that part of what's being conveyed. And like you said, the other part is now the ramifications of what did Walt see when Locke touched him on the arm? What did he see? Because he knows a lot more. And I think he knows that that hatch is going to open and he wants off the island. So
yeah.
what is so scary about being contained by that hatch, in that capsule, whatever it is. And it's interesting, it's kind of capsule looking.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, Sawyer, obviously is pretty cautious about it too. And the fact that he doesn't want anything, he doesn't think that there's any good from opening or getting in there. Like Jack thinks, oh, they might have supplies, or it could be a new bunker for all of us, and blah blah blah. You know, it's interesting that Jack saw the possibilities with it when Saeed is pretty, I'm going to say pretty cautious.
Yeah.
So, if it isn't Michael and Walt's scene, it's definitely that scene between Saeed, Jack, and Locke, because a lot of thing transpires, you know, between leadership, the fact that all three are sort of leaders, um, and how that dynamic plays out, and really kind of coming to a little bit of a cautionary truce. Maybe it's temporary, probably temporary. Um, but I think it also goes to uh, the point that all these relationships are being built on sand. What we thought were strong foundations that were starting to happen are not, because they're breaking down already. We get a few
Yeah.
weeks where everything seems like, okay, we're making progress. And now all of a sudden, it's like a house of cards and they've all blown over. And I feel like we've almost hit another kind of resets button type of thing because everybody's at odds and with each other. I think Kate and Son have like a stronger bond now. Um, Jack and Locke might find some shared footing. Saeed and Shannon are now, you know, a spectrum apart from each other.
Yeah.
It seems. Will that ever get repaired? Um, and so who knows? But I would say those couple of scenes were definitely pivotal to um, giving us some understanding, some answers to questions, but also raising several more, which is this series is all about.
Yeah. Um, I thought that, let's see. Um, I did think the scene with Sawyer and Kate at the end was great.
Hmm.
Just like the Sawyer kind of explaining that he believed that Kate could take his spot. Um, and then just Locke clapping back at Jack when Jack accuses him of lying and, just Locke just kind of being, you know, open and honest in that moment to say, hey, I'm not the only one that's kept secrets. Um,
Yeah.
and even though Locke has recognized Jack as the leader in the past, doesn't mean that everyone should have to report directly to him about every little thing. I'm not saying the hatch is a little thing,
Right.
but I think Locke proves his point that, hey, you haven't told the stuff. And that conversation with uh, Jack, John, and Hurley is also on there because Hurley's saying, like, well, do you think Kate did it because of the Sawyer thing? And John's like, why would Kate poison Michael?
Hmm.
And Hurley's just like, because like she's the fugitive. And you can
Yeah.
see the expression on Locke's face, like, clearly, secrets are wildly underappreciated on the island. And uh, it was just fun to see everyone's reaction in that scene because Jack just kind of like shakes his head when Hurley's
Hmm.
like he didn't know, and Hurley just blows up like how what am I supposed to do? I like everyone's got secrets,
Yeah. Well,
and
and
that's true.
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, that's true.
It is true. And it's interesting because when Son tells Kate that Jack is not going to tell that he knows. Kate even says, "Oh, he's really good at keeping secrets." And, it's true. He seems to be one of the few that knows a lot that's going on. And of course,
Yeah.
on Locke's side, I'd be kind of taking a tally. Okay, he didn't tell us about the cache of guns. Tick. He didn't tell us about Kate being a fusion. Tick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack knows a lot, that he's not telling people. So,
Yeah. Sun and the poison.
tick.
Like, and I'm sure there's other things. I mean, they didn't, how many people, I'm curious to know how many people know about the dead pilot, you know? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's a shared secret between he, Kate, and Charlie originally.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that kind of branched out to the rest, maybe possibly the rest of the known cast that we see on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that kind of then filtered out a little bit. That is one thing that I'm continually, like trying to like not make assumptions about because, something will come up and I'm like, how did he not know that? And
yeah,
I'm assuming because we know that everybody else knows, and that's not the case. Like who else knows that Jack was hallucinating his dad? Locke knows,
yeah,
but does anybody else know? People would have thought he was nutcase, you know? Does Locke know that Kate slipped, Jack some sleeping pills so that he could get some rest? Probably not.
yeah.
Another tick on the wall. So, it's very interesting. There's a lot of secrets, and it's hard to kind of build a foundation when you've got a lot of secrets. And it's almost like, okay, campfire, let's all get it out in the open. So yeah.
Yeah, and there's when Hurley's talking about not being able to tell who knows what, he makes the comment, yeah, Steve didn't even know about the polar bears. And what I
Yeah,
find funny is, does he mean Steve, or is he actually, because he used to get Steve and Scott mixed up,
yeah,
even though we don't know who they are off screen really. Um, because Michael is the one at the golf course when Hurley creates the golf course. And Hurley's like, "Oh, we all need a break. We're all stressed out to the max. We got polar bears." And Michael's like, "Polar bears?" And Charlie's
yeah,
like, "You didn't hear about that?" And
yeah,
so in that moment where Hurley's saying, "How do I keep everything straight?" And he says, "Steve even." So I'm even wondering did Steve not even know, or was he referencing Michael? And that's just a product of his reasoning, like, I can't keep everything straight.
yeah. Well, and
So I thought that
maybe
was
that's
funny.
even, giving voice to us as the audience trying to keep things straight of who knows what, the who know what game. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
Did you have any other honorable mention scenes or?
I think those four or those, so the major one plus Sawyer and Kate at the end,
Mm-hmm,
Locke kind of putting Jack in his place at the hatch,
mm-hmm,
um, and then the Hurley, John and Jack conversation was, I
mm-hmm,
thought, a much needed breath of fresh air to kind of lighten the mood. So,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
uh, yeah.
So, to our second question now, in light of that discussion, who was the most interesting character from the episode? So your short list, and
As
then
there's
your
always a
top
list.
pick.
Um, I have four people that I think are the most interesting between Michael, Walt, Sawyer, and Kate. Um, and even though it's Kate's episode with the flashbacks, I do think I'm leaning between Michael and Walt. And even though I love Michael's reaction, I think Walt kind of coming clean and kind of leading the audience into the unknown of like, well, why do we need to get off the island?
Mm-hmm.
I think Walt is the most interesting character of the episode just for those moments um and just kind of the like you said, the bond that they have kind of, you know, nurtured to this point, where Walt isn't afraid to tell his father things like he was earlier in the episode because Michael would get irate or whatever. So yeah, that's where I land. And I was taken aback when Walt pulled his arm away from Locke. Because Locke was just trying to be like a nurturing, like little grab, like to say, hey, I know you would never do anything to hurt your father. And Walt like really jerks his arm away, which, like you said, did he get a sense of something? Like, did he, see some kind of
I was thinking like
vision
a vision.
or
Yeah.
and so that was really startling to me. Like,
Yeah.
and even John was like, "What's wrong?" Like,
Yeah.
and the only thing he has left to say is just don't open it.
Mm-hmm.
So really, I think for me, Walt kind of, you know, leans back into the mysterious island,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of that mythos surrounding the unknown, and which I think will just, which leads into the next, is it two more episodes of the finale? Three
There's
more.
three. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to
So,
double check that because I thought this was part of the finale. But it's not. We have 23, 24, and 25. And I think
okay.
what happened is they maybe in the original broadcast, like they may have, had like a 2 hour block or something, and they've broken
Hmm.
it up into three. I'm not exactly sure. But
Okay.
yeah, there's definitely three more episodes for this season.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, what about you? Most interesting character. Where were you leaning?
Well, I thought, we really had stellar performances all around. Um, but like you, I think it's closer to you know, the Michael and Walt, and I'm gonna go with Michael. I feel like even though he immediately thought Sawyer, I think again, as we talked a few weeks ago, it's the idea of how things are framed, and how we get kind of, mediated into believing this or that. And I think that, it he probably should have been a little bit more open that it could be somebody other than Sawyer because Sawyer has been there and working and, doing his thing. So, I do feel that while it does seem like the natural thing is to figure it's Sawyer,
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is that it's not always right there on the surface. It's not that easy. Um, but at the end of the day, even though he had that little faux pas, uh, it really is his relationship with his son and the fact that he really has come quite a distance with being a parent and how he interacts with his son, that it's a respectful father-son relationship.
Yeah.
Um, and the fact that, yes, he wants to do what's right by Walt, but at the same time, if Walt is so, so, so against something, it's nice that he takes the pause to think about that, that a few weeks ago he would not have done, you know.
Yeah.
So I really felt like Michael's had a lot of growth, and that he was willing to put aside going on the raft, even though he has, spent a lot of island time working on it. So, yeah, so I would say Michael would probably be my top choice. But like I said, it was a hard decision because there were great performances all around. I even liked Tom. I thought Tom was a sweet person, a sweet character, um, and just his performance coming across in the little bit of screen time that he had was very nice. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it, um,
Yeah, I really think I was thinking about it more and just even when someone gets a small window of time in an episode, um, like Sun's character, she's not on the screen a lot, but you feel like how sad she is about Jin going away and the fear that she has for him. Um, I know we've said it a lot, but this cast is, I if any of all the shows that have been done in all the time, like, I feel like there are times when you're watching a show and you think, oh, maybe this person could be played by someone else. Like this just doesn't seem to fit. I feel like every person on this show, like it just it fit. They fit the role that they're playing.
mhm,
The chemistry that they have together seems great. Um, and like even like the scene with like you with Saeed and Locke and John about the hatch, and Saeed is like flabbergasted, like I brought you here to talk him out of this insanity. Like,
yeah,
what are you doing? Because he
yeah,
he assumed, they're butting heads, so he assumed Shaq would be like, no, no, we're not doing anything. So it just but all of that, all of those responses, the reactions, they seem so genuine.
mhm,
Um, and I think that's why it's so easy to get attached to these characters. And it's probably why I really enjoyed the scene with Michael and Walt so much.
mhm,
Just because you see where they've come since the beginning. Um,
yeah.
and Um, I don't even know what happens in the next episode, which makes me happy. Um, were there any other, were there any other moments in this episode that we haven't talked about that you thought were particularly interesting or that stood out to you?
I would just say karma comes around and bites you in the butt, man. Um, and
Yeah.
sometimes you see it, what you reap is what you sow pretty soon after. Um, and I actually liked, off screen we were talking about you had an alternate title for the episode. What was it again?
Hypocrisy knows no bounds.
There we go. Yeah. Um,
Yeah. If
I
I'll try to
did.
remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the alternate title. Sawyer had his usual nicknames. He called Jun Sulu, um, called Michael
Oh, Michael
Mickey.
Mickey.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh man. And of course his usual sweet cheeks and freckles for Kate. Let's see. Sorry, just kind of.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I liked a little bit of play that we had with Claire and Charlie. Like Charlie asks her, what's her plans? Because I mean, I see Charlie's more optimistic, like Claire. Claire is more optimistic. So, um, he's asking her what she plans to do after they're rescued, and she's, well, I hadn't given it any thought. Um, and she says she needs to figure things out. And he's like, well, you could stay in LA with me, and you can figure it out. So we see some, relationship advancement there till the writers come in and muck it up. But
Oh, I was gonna ask you, when Kate gives her speech and she talks about, you know, whenever she gets picked up, she's gonna be arrested.
Yeah,
And
she's
then
going
she
to
said
jail.
yeah, she makes some comment of like, doesn't matter whatever I was supposed to have done.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost kind of insinuating that she is not guilty of whatever she's accused of. Did you believe her in that moment? Like, did it seem like that was genuine? Because the expression on Sawyer's face
Mm-hmm.
almost made it seem like he believed that, oh, maybe she wasn't guilty even though she was arrested.
I think that was an interesting scene, because it for me it brought up a couple of things. One, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but Sawyer was judge and jury in that moment. But it also brings up, okay, looking at what we know backstory wise, she wanted into that safe deposit box, but she didn't have, oh, she did have a key. Why didn't she just go in and do it anyway? So did someone else have the key? And her name is actually not on the box as an approved person to come in. It to
Right.
me it left a lot of questions because I'm like, well, you were part of a bank heist. I mean, you did keep somebody, the bank manager from being shot by kind of stepping up and showing that she was actually leading the pack because
Yeah.
she wanted into that box. Um, so do I believe her? I'm not sure. I'm still kind of in a quandary because I feel like there's so much more of her story.
Yeah.
And we don't know. There are so many gaps in her timeline, and I don't understand her motivation or the reason why she's in various circumstances or situations where she has to be so over the top, I guess, about trying to
Yeah.
get to something like the box. Why couldn't she just go into the bank and say she has the key, you know? So she needs into the box. There's something holding her back from that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and that's the bank heist, I'm assuming, based on the timeline that's kind of developing in my brain, that's way after her going into seeing her mom. So she's already a
It
fugitive.
has to be. Yeah.
And, she can't actually just go see her mom. And she even says something about being the daughter, blah, 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 and the cop is trying to stop her. She hits the cop. Um, so she has done stuff or is in the position where she's been accused of doing stuff that she has either done or not done.
Yeah.
I honestly I don't know, you know, what
Yeah.
she's done.
Yeah, it's like whatever that initial thing was that made her go on the run. She's done stuff since then
Yeah.
that are like, well,
Yeah.
um,
Good point.
yeah,
Yeah, because the other thing I thought of, would a U.S. Marshal go all the way to Australia to get her and take her back to L.A. for a bad bank heist where where the only people that were shot were the bank robbers?
yeah,
Um, her going into the hospital and punching a cop. Are those all the type of things that you'd have a marshal going halfway around the world to find this person?
yeah,
Something's bigger going on that she
yeah. It
has
doesn't add up.
either directly done or been accused of doing.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't, yeah, I don't, I wonder, and it makes me wonder about the other characters like when we see their flashbacks, like how far ago, like in the last flashback, was it Saeed?
Saeed,
Um,
yes. Yes, and
and
we
that was right
know,
before.
yep, and we know that's current because he's gotten the plane ticket and he told him to move it to the next day. So we
Yeah,
do have a few where we know exactly what they were doing prior to getting on the plane. Like
yeah,
we know Jack, or not Jack, yes. Sun and Jun, Saeed
yep. Kate was
being
with the farmer.
extradited.
Yep,
Yes, she was with the farmer. She's being extradited. But we're getting stuff before that.
yep,
We don't ex I don't think we know Hurley. We do know Boone, and Boone was gonna probably go back, but we don't have the I'm leaving tomorrow type of send off. So we don't exactly know the timeline on Shannon and Boone, but it must be close to them taking a flight back to LA. But we don't know the full story on that.
yeah. And Michael is bringing Walt back
Yeah,
from his mom dying, so
that's kind of clear. We don't know
um,
about Sawyer. We know he shot the guy and found out that it was then um, a setup.
yep,
So we definitely have some questions there. We have some clarity about what people were doing right before they got on the plane,
yep,
or like why they were getting on the plane. So,
yeah. I really enjoy the aspect of having flashbacks.
mhm,
Um, it really helps um, lead into more questions. Um, but I never feel maybe this is a little different from watching it week to week back in the day,
mhm,
but it's never like frustrating. It's just like, oh my gosh, what is what are we gonna find out next? Like, what's going on? Like, it never felt like a frustrating aspect of the show. It felt like a positive thing.
mhm.
That we were being led with questions and we're just hoping to find some kind of answers along the way. So,
Yeah.
it's definitely a plus for the show that they can lead the audience in a way where we get two different types of stories, present day flashbacks, and
Mhm.
um, it just every bit of it seems like it makes sense, even though there are aspects of the show where we're just wondering what the hell's going on. So,
Yeah. I was just thinking that we kind of pulling the curtain back, when we first started recording, we were recording 2 or 3 episodes a week. So we were actually on a different pace to the watching schedule that the writers had assumed would be how people are going to watch the show. But now we're kind of on a, 1 episode a week. So now we're kind of following in line with the expectations of the writers and how they expected people to experience. So I feel like we get more time now to really kind of ruminate on the episode prior to the next episode. And of course, then our recording schedule, or not our recording schedule, but our posting schedule is once a week.
yep,
So that way our audience today now can kind of ruminate over what we've talked about, go and take another look at the episode, since they're all on streaming on Netflix right now, at the time of us recording. So fingers crossed they keep it that way.
yeah, yeah, and the
But,
week by week, watching the series week by week, like it was originally on broadcast, like it really ramps up the anticipation. Like
mhm,
it really delivers the man, I can't wait to watch the next episode.
yeah,
Um, and all the while you're thinking of all the bits and all the characters and relationships that's been happening and just wondering what's happened next. Um, and I know that the new format a lot of the time is shorter seasons, 8 episodes, 6 or 7 episodes. Um, Man, there's something about a show like Lost, watching week to week. It's just it's one of the best shows. So,
Yeah.
um, and there's something magical about waiting. And when you binge watch a show that's only 6 or 7 episodes, or maybe 8, like it can be really good. It can be, but it doesn't feel like you have the time to kind of connect as well with the characters like you do with a show like
Hmm.
Lost.
Yeah. Yeah, because you get, you know, well, for this show, we're getting 43 minutes 25 times for one season,
Yeah.
which makes it does allow for character development. And I think it says a lot about what we're seeing today, where we probably are more focused on the action and the go, 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 go. Um, case in point, we were originally talking about this series because we wanted to talk about the night agent.
Yeah.
But that's very indicative of viewing today, which is like 8 episodes, and it's, a pretty intense action adventure, you know, thriller type of a show. And it does make it easier to binge watch it than to have to watch the wait to watch the next episode.
Yeah.
Um, where, maybe you'd want to spend more time on the characters because then that's what's going to carry, because you want to spend a little time with your characters between episodes versus when it's action, you're kind of swept up into the moment and, you want to keep riding that moment. You don't want to, watch episode 1 of Night Agent and then say, oh, okay, I'll wait a week. No, because you ramped up, you want to
Yeah.
find out what's next, so I definitely, um, it's interesting because I know I'm taking the time. I did start kind of watching like 2 or 3 episodes of Lost initially, and then realized, wait a minute, I need to take a pause, so I know for me I've really enjoyed our recording schedule of once a week to be able to have a little more time with the episode, just kind of, ruminating on it
Yeah.
and kind of relishing what I've learned, and play with the scenarios of what I think might happen next, you know. So,
And what's gonna happen next? I love that we're at that point.
mhm.
I just think it really I think I've talked about it offline. I hope I've said it online, but you have great insights to what happens, and so getting that take after your first watch is gonna it's just I'm really looking forward to seeing how the next 3 episodes of the season land for you.
Yeah.
So
Hey, quick question. Can you hear my cat in the background? Well, now she stopped.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, for just so you know, we have one cat. She loves toys and she will carry it around in her mouth and all she does is meow. And it's kind of a stifled meow because she's got the toy in her mouth and she's walking around. And I don't know if it's a little bit of a kind of like, oh, I'm so happy I have this toy, meow, meow, meow. But for others, it has picked up on other meetings at times. And it just feels, I always worry that people think that we have a cat in pain, because it is a little more of um, a sense of urgency to her meows. So if you ever hear the cat, that would be Gwendolyn. She probably has a cat toy in her mouth. But anyway. I was
That's
like,
okay.
oh my God, and she's so loud sometimes. So, and
We're
you
here for
know
the
fear.
cats.
Hmm?
Like, we're here for the cats.
That's right. That's
Like,
right.
that's gonna bring up our viewership.
Exactly. Yeah.
Every little bit helps.
That's right. Another opportunity. Max just left. We've got Algernon over here. We've got Cecily right down here where she's always at. We even have Pocky in the room, which is unusual. Usually she's out in the living room. Probably the one, but I don't know that she necessarily likes cameras. She's looking at me. She's telling me, Mom, it's lunchtime.
Uh,
That's what it is. It's the lunch hour.
I
So
mean, sounds like a cue to
I think it might be the cue to wrap up and call this one a wrap and put it in the can for uploading in the weeks to come when it's at its time.
sounds
So
good.
yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. Of course, we invite you and encourage you to do all the wonderful usual things that YouTubers ask you to do, and that's to subscribe. We are once a week on Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We go with Travis's time for posting. We ask for the algorithms to, give it a thumbs up, maybe do a comment or maybe an emoji, anything to let us know that you were here, that you enjoyed what we had to say. And if you feel moved to write a comment, just remember I'm the newbie. So definitely put a little spoiler alert if you want to talk about something in season 3 that Travis would know about, but I wouldn't. And then, so that way, I don't get spoiled by something because I've tried really hard to
It's
not
amazing.
look at things
Yeah.
and know what's coming up. So, but with that, we do hope and encourage you to engage with us down below in the comments box. Subscribe and like the video. Share it with your friends. If they are a Lost aficionado with the show, and we will be back next week with the part 1 of the finale of season 1. So, with that, we say have a fantastic day and week, and we will see you next week at this time.